for anyone that has logged in after the initial welcome. Let me say once again, welcome everybody back to another webinar where we will today discuss the latest in our renovation product suite, and that's going to be the renovation program for VA loans. So it is a very happy and proud moment for us to be able to offer this product. And I know certainly there's going to be a lot of questions out there. Today, we are going to cover really all the essential basics about the particulars of VA Reno. We're not going to go over as much of the normal, REMN style discussion, at least on this initial run. I think the most important thing to cover today is really the nuts and bolts of what makes VA Reno, and let it exist in its own microcosm. Our initial thing, the way I always start every single one of these, let us do our audio test. Should anybody right now be having problems hearing and discerning the sounds that are coming out of my mouth, please give me a comment in the question pane to let me know whether I'm having audio issues coming out. If I do not see a substantial number of responses saying that I'm having issues on my end, and I just see one or two, unfortunately, it means it's just you. So I'm hoping that it's neither. I hope everything is fine. In fact, I see several comments streaming in saying that audio is not a problem. So fantastic. I'm glad to hear that. Let us take our first steps and get this ship on course, on its course. And of course, that was supposed to bring in the next slide, but that didn't happen. So let us do this. So let us begin by just stating the obvious. VA renovation. This is a VA loan that is going to allow you to simultaneously purchase a property and make renovations to that very same property all in one loan with one closing. It is a very beautiful thing. All right, now you notice first things out of my mouth, I said purchase. That is right. We are limiting this program to only working as purchase only, in the interim. That is just the way this is going to start out. All right. Also, we do have a limitation. We're saying modest renovations being made to these homes. So that $35,000 limit is going to be the total limit for our repair escrow on all VA Reno loans. So really, you got to put yourself in the mindset of thinking, you know what, this is essentially very much like a purchase limited 203K. It is very similar to that. And as long as you kind of keep that frame of reference in your mind, you probably will not wind up in a dangerous area with looking at doing one of these loans. So let's get into the rules of engagement. And don't get me wrong, it was kind of fun writing these type of things into the presentation, knowing that this is on a VA product. I like to have at least a little bit of fun here. So this is my bad joke really of the day. So the rules of engagement, number one, the big thing being definitely this is purchase only. All right, I can't say that to you enough. All right, if you come in talking about refinances, unfortunately, we're not going to be able to take care of those. All right, now one of the major benefits of being able to do anything as a VA loan is the opportunity to go to 100% financing. VA renovation is going to offer the same thing. In most cases, as long as we don't have problems with appraisal value, we will be looking to take the total combined cost of both the purchase and the renovation cost and financing that at 100%, which would be a beautiful thing for many veterans, and I am certainly hoping that we get to do a lot of these types of transactions. Now, of course, to make this work, the appraisal is going to have to be done on the property's post-renovation value. To take that and put it in its most human and simplest terms, we are looking at the property's future value on VA renovation appraisal. That's all that we need to look for is the property's future value. With that being said, for any of you operating as loan officers, or if you are looking at trying to describe how to work with this product to your referral partners, as in real estate agents, I know, I said it, real estate agents, but we had to bring them up at some point. If you're looking at how to describe this, you always want to make sure that you're telling them and yourselves, qualify your borrower based on that total combined cost. All right, they have to qualify paying, making that full payment. As long as you do those things, you're going to be able to get yourself on track and moving forward with these in a fairly positive and easygoing manner. Now, in the beginning, before we can go into anything else, let's talk about what makes an eligible property type for a VA renovation loan. All right, the number one most important thing, it must be a property that has an existing certificate of occupancy, which means the property must be complete. All right, it must be a complete property. We are going to be able to work with manufactured homes. All right, obviously with manufactured homes, when they face a little bit of a stiffer climate with restrictions, we're not going to be doing structural elements to a manufactured home on any product, and that's certainly going to be the case with VA renovation as well. Single family properties obviously are always going to be the draw. All right, we can work with PUDs. So for other subdivisions across America out there, we'll be able to do VA reno on those as well. And last but not least, condos and VA approved condo projects. All right, we will definitely be able to work with those property types. On the other side of the list, things that are going to be automatically ineligible. Properties that were not completed previously by a builder. So unfortunately, we will not be able to use this particular program to make finishes to a property that was never completed by a builder. The property must be complete with an existing certificate of occupancy. This also means we would not be able to work with condemned property. So if the property is scheduled for demolition, was badly damaged by fire, and needs to be torn down and rebuilt, unfortunately, VA Reno is not going to be the product that we could use to make saves to that particular property. All right. But this goes true for any property that does not have a valid certificate of occupancy. If the borrower needed to sell it because of a health or safety issue, and unfortunately, we're not able to transfer that certificate of occupancy, the property will not be eligible for VA funding through the VA renovation program. And last but not least, and if you're doing VA loans, you've already known this, any property that is located within the electrical line easements. All right, so if you have, public utility easements, you already know it's just not going to work for the VA. All right, so that covers eligibility on property. Let's specifically now talk about eligibility of repairs. And we're going to spend a little bit of time on this particular one because I understand that whenever we have a new product, everybody feels just a little bit off and disoriented when talking about what can and cannot be done. All right, so first, let's take a broad stroke overall approach at looking at the repair eligibility and state our number one limitation, the repair escrow itself. $35,000 hard maximum limit. Okay, that's going to include all fees and the contingency. All right, so let's realize that that is kind of where we are. The repairs are going to be limited to modest cosmetic improvements to the property. All right, this is not going to be the product that you're going to use for massive additions and a complete and total gut where you're going to change over the entire property. That's not the intended purpose that we are going to have with this particular property. All right, there are other loan types that are more amenable to that type of plan. VA Reno at this point in time is not one of them. But for those simple cosmetic renovations or simple repairs to mechanical items or features of the home, we are going to be able to do things like installing new kitchen appliances if we're doing a kitchen renovation. We will be able to do things like that. All right. And also to get into our limitations side of the lines, all right, we have to realize some things that we can't do. All right. And the major reason for a lot of the ways we've set up this program initially has to do with this first thing in the eligibility. When you look at this right-hand column, and that is the 90 days. All right, the 90 days has really been a major driving factor in a lot of the decisions that we've had to make on this loan type. All right, because that 90 days is ironclad and the loan must be completely and totally finished out. Otherwise, we have issues. And there are issues that none of us want to have. All right, so that being said, because of the 90 days, we can't take on any repairs in the property that will take more than 90 days to complete. This also means if we are looking in the cold weather states, I know you sunny Californians and you Floridians and you guys in Texas don't have these problems, but for the rest of us that has to deal with winter weather, if we are doing external repairs to the property, we only have 90 days. Weather could be a factor in making external repairs ineligible in certain times of the year, depending upon where you are located in the country. All right, so please be aware of things like that because of the particular constraint and time limit that we have with this 90 days. Now, also with this 90 days, what I want you to realize, that is a major factor in setting a limit for the repairs at $35,000. All right. We cannot take on the possibility of trying to cram in a larger project and trying to hope that it's finished within a 90-day period. So that 90-day time frame has definitely taken a very serious molding point on this entire product and the way that we've decided to administer it, especially here in the beginning, because we want to make sure that we are successful out of the gate with getting people to the closing line, not just from the funding standpoint, but the finish line and the construction standpoint within the time frame, so that none of us have any additional problems. That last bullet in the middle that we didn't discuss, the remediation of health and safety issues for the property. So if you are looking at particular health and safety issues, especially if they're going to be things that are going to require us to run permits, or things that will certainly require us to do a consultant's report, because it's not really technically something that we should be handling in a, without consultant type loan, we're just not going to be able to do those kind of repairs. All right. The number one thing, and this is kind of hard coded into our guidelines, if a repair is specifically going to necessitate the use of a consultant's report, it will not be eligible for VA renovation. All right. Now, after talking about those limitations, I do want you to realize there's a lot of positives. Take a look at this particular slide. There are still a lot of really transformative things that we can do for these homes in the name of our veterans, especially making some of the augmentations to the home to make it accessible for certain disabilities, which is, I know, something that many veterans come home and they need to make augmentations to homes to deal with the reality of how they're going to be living their lives moving forward. It is an honor and a privilege to say that we will be able to take care of things like that for our veterans to make sure that they are living the most comfortable lives possible. But take a look at this list. This is not a list of all the things that you can do. This is a list that I really felt was important to include, because even though we have to talk about the things you can't do, I wanted you to have a good basis for things that you can do, and I want you to move forward. In fact, the things that I really want you to focus on in terms of things that you can't do is just kind of laying down a list of things that you cannot do. All right. So in terms of interior projects that are large and massive and sprawling and, most importantly, time consuming. All right. So exterior things like barbecue pits, outdoor fireplaces, building, a bathhouse or a pool house, or those type of structures. Those are the type of projects that just take too long. All right, so they're not going to work. We're also going to bring over some of our other exterior luxuries that we wouldn't allow. So tennis courts, tree surgeries, putting things in your home like an elevator, a dumbwaiter, photo murals, satellite dishes. Still, generators. Generators are still going to be a no-go. And if you take a look at the large two at the bottom, all right, the first, that's the really important one. Anything that would necessitate the use of going to a consultant's report. All right, so those are things that we would not be able to do. And the second one, really talking about that time frame. All right, we cannot go beyond that time frame. It is a definite source of contention. We cannot do that. All right, so let's remember to tamp ourselves down into reality and to focus on doing renovations that will work inside of this particular product. Now, let us talk about program things. All right, the paperwork stuff, the loan stuff. All right, let's get into that conversation. And the very first thing to bring up, forms. Of course, there are forms. There's always forms. We can't get away from forms. So if you actually go to our webpage, REMNwholesale.com, you look at forms and you drop down the VA, you will see that we definitely have VA renovation forms. They're all listed there. The disclosures are relatively easy, just like 203K or with home style. They're all basically print name at top, sign name at bottom. They are simple. But the one that you have to start off your loan with when you're looking at your scenario, very number one with the bullet, is the maximum mortgage worksheet, which is very simple. All right. I mean, this representation, this picture is essentially all the actionable items on the entire MMW for VA Reno. And as you can see, you only have, a few boxes that you're even going to correspond with on the entire worksheet. All right, so the number one thing that you're going to look at is getting your hard costs from your contractor and getting them into the MMW. All right, your contingency reserves are either going to be 10 or 15%. All right, 10% in most cases. If you have some scenarios where the property does not have utilities on, if they're not operable at the time of inspection, that's when it goes to 15%. All right, that's an important thing to look at here. If the borrower still opts to do an inspection, so let's say if they wanted to do a feasibility study just to make sure that they're covering everything that the house really needs, we would be able to get that in here as well. All right. Final inspections, very important. They're going to be handled in most cases by the VA appraiser. All right, so considering how cantankerous certain VA appraisers have a reputation of being, you do have to be aware of that. All right. Also, looking at these projects, since we are more than likely not going to be using HUD consultants very often, realize that these appraisers are going to be the people that you're getting your final, okay, your final stamp saying that the project is complete. So let's be cognizant of that in particular. And outside of that, we have one title update. And this is kind of the standard thing that REMN does for all of our renovation loans. Doesn't matter how many we actually run, the borrower's only ever going to pay for one. And last but not least, if there are any permit fees, we will certainly be able to include those as well. So we add up the total of that, and that's going to be our total amount of the repair escrow. All right, so all of those things listed together are the total amount of your total repair escrow. And then after that, we're going to look at the property. First, starting off with the actual contract sales price. All right, the next thing that's going to happen, the worksheet's going to actually bring down your total cost from step number 1. All right, so that gets brought down, and it's going to be added in entirely by the worksheet on its own, and you are going to then enter in line D here in step 2 what we believe the after improved value to be. Just like with every other renovation loan, you are looking to make sure that your after improved value is at least equal to that total cost. So if you're purchasing at 100 and doing a $35,000 total repair escrow, you want your actual after improvement value to be somewhere north of $135,000. As long as that's the case, you'll be able to go up to 100% LTV of that cost. The only time you will not be able to is when your total cost is higher than your appraisal value. So if your total cost is 135, but your appraisal value comes back at 125, you will be getting 100% of 125. All right, that is an important distinction to make here. The only other thing that you need to worry about in terms of limited access to LTVs, if you are looking at credit criteria, our overlays for manual underwrites on VA with scores in a certain range will certainly apply. All right, so all of our manual underwriting overlays will apply, which includes the LTV restrictions for sub 600 scores. All right, an important thing to remember. There's an important note that we also have to make when we're talking about contractor vetting. All right, VA has been involved with construction lending for quite some time now. In fact, they have a pretty large database of already ID'd builders that have gone through the VA process. All right, contractors are not going to be immune to this. Contractors will also have to go to the VA website and get a veteran's ID number to be able to be eligible to do work in a VA rental loan. All right, so we have the information here, we understand the process. From the way it was described to me by the VA itself, it's really going to be a process that takes about a week. All right, there's paperwork that needs to be filled out, and we'll do everything we can to make sure that it's filled out, properly, so this way it doesn't take multiple times through the system to make it work. But in general, this is not something that we can avoid. All right, going through the VA process and getting the VA ID is not the totality of becoming an approved contractor. Contractor approval is still the responsibility of the lender, and my hand's up in the air right now. We're on the phone or on a webinar, so you can't see me. My hand's up, that's us. We're the lender. So we still have to do our normal contractor vetting, this is going to be yet another piece of that vetting. All right, so it's not the only part, but this is a separate piece that has to also be taken care of, so the contractor has that actual ID number. Now, outside of doing that, the rest of the process is really going to boil down to being exactly the same as our normal renovation process. And this is where we shine, because as many of you know, this is exactly what we are good at. So our normal contractor validation period is 24 to 48 hours, right? It'll take the VA at least a week to kind of get back to us on whether or not the VA ID number was issued, all right? But outside of that one particular fact, we will have the rest of the contractor validation package taken care of, and you will have the answer about your contractor within 24 to 48 hours of submission of the loan. Our renovation concierge department still does that. Yeah, they're still here, and they still do this work. So that's still going to happen in the same and normal way, all right? Now realize, since we are not doing consultant loans as a VA renovation, mortgage payments are not going to be financeable on VA renovation deals. All right, so they will not be able to finance any mortgage payments. All right, just like with a limited 203K, no financing of mortgage payments is going to be possible. The post-closing process will work as follows. As normal with renovation, the work is not allowed to begin until the loan is closed and funded. All right, so no work to be done until after funding. The VA will not, capital NOT, allow us to send any funds on closing to the contractor. It is not going to happen. The contractor is going to have to be paid using progress payments. So this is why keeping that relationship with your appraiser is going to be a good thing. Also, this may be the opening to use consultants to do post-closing inspections only, right? If the appraiser is not comfortable being able to gauge the work, because that consultant, or I'm sorry, that appraiser would have to be able to give us a status report. So if we have one contractor at 20% complete, they would have to come in, and whoever's inspecting would have to be able to say this job is at least 20% complete at this point, and then we could process a draw to the contractor. At that point, we could do this again at 60%, and then ultimately we'll save the final disbursement for when the job is 100% complete. Now, the great news is we are able to use more than one contractor per transaction on a VA renovation file. In fact, we will go up to 3 contractors. We'll be able to use 3. Each of those contractors will be able to have 2 draws of their own while the work is being done. But that literally means we need to be halfway finished at the first draw and then completion for the final draw when you're using multiple contractors. All right, do you realize this? If you're using multiple contractors that we are paying directly, that's literally going to mean going through the VA ID process for each of those contractors, and then also validating and approving each of those contractors separately. Not the way I would choose to go. I like doing things the easy way. So please be aware of that. And that, my friends, covers the basics of the VA renovation. I didn't want to make today's presentation too heavy-handed or to go very far down a rabbit hole with describing certain things. I really felt that the wealth of today would really be getting into a Q&A, and I'm sure that we have some very great questions building up here in our question pane. So at this point in time, while I will leave the information about our next webinar up here on the screen for all of you to take a look at, because we certainly want you to check that out next month. I'm going to turn my full attention now specifically to the question pane, so that this way I can see the questions that you guys have, because I'm sure there are a ton of questions about this product laying out there, and I want to make sure that we get you as many answers as humanly possible, and I wanted to save time to do this with. So let's see. One of the first questions, and this question comes up every webinar that we do, and I never tire of seeing this question. You know, I love it. But of course, are we going to get everyone a copy, or will we get everyone a copy of the slide deck? Yes, you will all get a copy of the slide deck. All right, that is going to happen. All right, so that is that particular question. That always comes through fine. Audio stuff, let's see. All right, so Matthew has a question, and it says, other appliances aside from kitchen appliances, for example, washer, dryer, furnace, water heater, etc. So, other appliances outside of kitchen appliances, yes, I do believe we will be able to take care of them. The build out for rooms is going to be necessitated. We don't have a permanently fixed rule as we had for a long time with Fannie Mae, and certainly the VA doesn't have a particular issue or a bugaboo about, or against, I should say, washers and dryers. So those things should not be a problem. So we will be fine to put in washers, dryers, furnaces, microwaves, you name it. All right, we will be able to take care of those particular things. All right, our next question from Bob is roofing repair or replacement eligible? So in general, shingling a roof is certainly going to be doable, taking care of the durable process of the roof from its sheathing and sheeting on the top end to make sure that it remains watertight will certainly be eligible. All right, that was actually one of the repairs on our eligible repair slide. So we will be able to take care of roofing jobs for our vets. That's an absolute yes. Let's see, our next question is from Dawn, and she is asking, is the $35,000 just for repairs? Does that have to include contingency reserve and finance fees? Yes, it will have to include the contingency reserve and all finance fees. Yes, so be very cognizant of that. That $35,000 must be inclusive of all fees collected in relation directly to the renovations. Our next question is from Brian, and he says, can you include termite section 1 and 2 repairs items if it's not health and safety? Yes, for wood destroying insect infestations, for any insect infestations in particular, as long as they're not directly posing a direct health and safety issue, we will be able to include the cost of those particular things. All right, so especially if there were evidence of past infestations and you're just basically doing a preventative treatment on the purchase just to make sure that these animals, these insects do not return, yes, we will be able to take care of those particular items inside of a VA renovation loan. All right, so let's see, our next question is from Joseph, and he asks, doesn't structural damage fall under health and safety? Yes, structural damage would present a serious health and safety problem, and those things are not eligible. So we would not be doing health and safety items, nor would we be doing any structural work in VA renovation. If you have a project that is in need of that type of renovation, you're going to have to look to doing a home style loan, or if the borrower will prefer to go, FHA, it would have to go 203K standard. All right, so those are our battle lines. I mean, that's where we go. So if you have heavy duty renovations that need to be done, you need to go to either the FHA or the conventional alternative. So you're either going to go 203K or home style on those particular items. And if your borrower still needs to wind up looking at trying to find a way to get to 100%, I would have to say, as an FHA, you're either going to have to look at gift funds, or if you're in a state where you have an eligible down payment assistance program, you'd be able to do that, making use of the FHA. All right, so those are our alternatives there. Let's take in some more questions. Let's see. Craig has asked, can you do new countertops and kitchen cabinets? Yes, Craig, we will be able to do kitchen cabinets and countertops in a kitchen renovation, as long as we're not changing the layout of the home, where we would have to take down walls and things of that nature. As long as we are just sticking to cabinet refacing, countertops, flooring, things of that nature, we will be perfectly fine to go with VA renovation. And now our next question is from Don. And Don. And Don has asked, can you please show the repair example slide again? All right, so let us go back to the repair example slide, because someone definitely wants to see that. So let me stop self-promoting here. Let's stop doing that, and let's actually get into the proper slide. All right, so repair examples, we'll leave it here for a little bit just to make sure that everybody is well aware of the list of sample items that we can definitely take care of inside of a VA renovation loan. Okay, so that was Don's question. Now we have a Dawn question. And she's asked, can you close a temporary CO in the city municipality requires repairs? I don't think we're going to be anywhere near as lenient or flexible with with that particular policy as we are with the Fannie Mae home style. Fannie Mae literally has provisions in writing that kind of give us the ability to do that. We don't have such a guarantee from the VA. So this product is definitely more restrictive and a little bit more rigid now. And I imagine that as time goes on, it will be like Fannie Mae where it will soften and change over time. All right. So I think once they get more of an appetite for seeing the way renovations work as opposed to brand new construction builds, I think things will become more comfortable as they remit more guidance and they begin to stretch out and give more guidance and details in their guidelines. But for the time being, Dawn, I would say no. All right. Let's see, our next question is from Lisa. She says, is there a contingency that we have to calculate into this, such as 10 or 15%? Yes, Lisa, there is going to be a contingency. Doing renovation loans without a contingency is literally reckless. So we will not be taking part in that type of reckless behavior. We will certainly have a 10% contingency on the vast majority of deals, and it's going to go up to 15% whenever the utilities are not operating at the time of inspection. All right, so let us get on to the next question. I've lost my place. Oh no. How could I have lost my place that easily? It's not scrolling in a predictable way. All right, now I can see the next set of questions. So our next question is from Julia, and she says, when you say occupancy cert, is this the timeline? Is there a timeline similar to the 2 or 3K loan program that is the age of the home must be 12 months or greater? All right, so let me paraphrase that just in case my reading of the live question was not clear. She's essentially asking, is there an actual time frame that the certificate has to have been valid prior to doing a VA renovation loan, as in with the 203K, where it has to be valid for the preceding 12 months? No, there's not. All right, we will be able to work with an occupancy cert that is relatively new. Right, we don't have that particular distinction on the VA, so that is a great piece of news. They're already starting off in a very positive direction, following the home style with not requiring that the certificate of occupancy be at least 12 months old. The next question is from Stuart. What happens with any remaining funds if the renovation is less than projected plus the contingency fund? So it's going to be the same option. All right, so it's going to be either be a principal curtailment, or the borrower is going to have the choice to do additional work with the contractor so that they can work the money off, as opposed to having the money go back into the mortgage. But we will not be putting the money in the borrower's hand. All right, so all renovation loans remain completely and totally non-cash out transactions. Our next question is from Jose, and Jose is asking, what kind of training are VA appraisers getting on renovation appraisals? We are still trying to find that out ourselves. So that's not a question that I can particularly answer. We are still in the process of trying to figure out and get guidance on what things VA appraisers know about renovation transactions, and it's going to be a little bit of an adventure. But this is an adventure that we're all going to be going on together. I'm sure that there are appraisers that are, basically certified in more than one direction, meaning that this appraiser isn't just a VA appraiser, but there are certain VA appraisers that are also FHA appraisers as well. And if they are at all familiar with the 203K process, it should be like a fish to water scenario where they should be able to pick this up. All right, but in any regard, for individuals that are not familiar in that particular way, we would also, basically be here with you, trying to help them understand it. All right, let's see. Our next question is from Patricia. Is it okay to use Home Depot, etc., for appliances? I will tell you this: in my experience in renovation lending going on, my God, far longer than I would have ever thought when I was first asked, hey, how about getting into 203K loans? But in all these years, I will tell you, Home Depot and basically retail operations, they're all going to be essentially okay. More than likely, we're going to have to do some kind of reimbursement to the borrower if they had to entirely pay for it up front. All right, but we will have to work on our existing workarounds that we're using for both 203K and and conventional with home style loans to work with Home Depot and Lowe's, et cetera. And we would look to replicate that here as well with the VA renovation program as well. All right, so let's scroll down. Let's take a look at the next set of questions. And we have a question from Denise. When appropriate, is the home improvement a second mortgage? No, Denise, VA renovation, just like home styles, just like 203K, always a single loan transaction that is a first mortgage only. So it's never done as a second. It's always going to be done as a first. All right, our next question comes from Oric. Interestingly spelled name. All right, and it's once again asking to go back to the repair examples. I've left that up. Let's see, Peter's question. All right, and Peter's question is basically, do we have slides for continuing training for you guys to use? And we will certainly make sure that this particular deck that we use today for this training, that it goes to everyone that was in attendance of the webinar. All right, we're going to make sure that you all have it. All right, so please bear in mind, it's going to maybe take a day or two for my marketing people to get it out, but it will go out to you. More than likely, you will have it by the end of the week. All right, those questions are all particularly pertaining to the PowerPoint. So let's scroll down a little bit more. All right, and Mary asked the question, what if we're making cosmetic repairs that do not increase the appraised value? All right, so obviously value is going to be important. And if we do not have the value that we need, that's going to impact the amount of money that we can give on the loan. So we're only going to be able to go to 100% of the value. So if we have a property where our total cost combined is $150,000, yet we got an appraisal value back at $145,000, the borrower is going to have to bring the difference to the table, or they're going to have to decrease the amount of money going into the renovations, so that this way it kind of maps out to everything being a wash and even. All right, so definitely over improving or overpaying for the property is not going to be a good idea, because value is important to these transactions if the borrower is intending to go 100% and not needing to bring significant funds to the closing table. All right. Our next question is from Kay. She's basically asking, can the veterans do the work themselves? Our stance on self-help is going to remain exactly the same. It's an incredibly awkward uphill battle that we will say no to far more often than we will say yes. All right, especially considering we have a very, very, very tight 90-day timeline to get all the work done, and the VA is really not looking flexible on that particular issue at the moment. So I cannot say with any certainty that we are going to be more likely to allow self-help on VA renovation. I would say, as slim as it is to make that work with us normally on FHA, 203Ks, and home styles, it will be even more strict on the VA renovation. All right, our next question comes from Julia. What happens if they are about 10 days over the 90-day completion? This is one of those questions where we're going to have to find out, because it's not a great scenario. See, the technical issue that we have with these loans is that the insurance from the VA, it's not a guarantee. It's not issued at closing. It's only issued at completion. So this loan literally does not have the one thing that truly makes it a VA loan until the work is complete on the property. So we certainly do not want to get to that point. We want to manage this well, and we are going to do everything in our power to keep ourselves out of these types of scenarios where the time is expiring and they just need more time. All right, so we want to avoid that, but certainly we will do our best to try to resolve the situation positively with the borrower and the VA, should that actually happen. All right, our next question comes from Frank, and Frank has asked, So closing costs and prepaid items in the purchase are included in 35,000. Higher costs of this closing costs quickly. We are not adding in the prepaid and closing costs to the 35,000. All right. I mean, in general, on the ledger of the transaction, obviously you're doing 100% financing, of everything. You would be looking at bringing in costs, fees, and whatnot. I would say, as in with most loans, if you're looking at being able to finance the cost of closing costs of prepaid, more than likely you're going to be talking about doing a sales concession to have those things being taken care of, by the seller. Our $35,000 calculation is really about the cost associated with the renovation, not the mortgage. All right, so discount points or title fees, those things are not added into the $35,000 at all. Those are not calculated at all when we are going into our loan amount. We are simply taking 100% of the purchase price and 100% of the renovation cost in particular. And we're adding those two things together, and hopefully that does not eclipse our property value. All right, so that is an important distinction to make, Miguel. All right, and that was Miguel's question. Let us move to the next set of questions, and we have about 10 minutes before we really do have to cut out. And I believe this is a great one. Let's see. And yes, one of my favorite questions, what do you estimate the reasonable application of closing time period for this particular program? All right, so the answer really is not going to be very different than the answer that we would give for Homestyle or that we would give for 203K. It's going to take you some time to actually put together the renovation part of the file. And the next go around, when we do a more traditional type of training, what we kind of go through the file process in particular, you're going to see that it's really the same information that we're gathering. Who's doing the work? What is the work, and how much does that work cost? Those are the three things that you have to document. For those of you that have never done a renovation before, it's going to take you a couple weeks to nail down giving the answers to all those particular questions. The way you're going to answer them, though, in general, the same way everyone else does in every renovation loan. You start off with a bid from a contractor. That's going to identify who your contractor is and how much they're charging for the work. And then you're going to work from there, all right? Once you have that particular information, you can then have that contractor taking care of the disclosures, getting those all back to you, and also giving us the contractor validation package, which is the contractor profile and also his licensing and insurance information, all right? And we will be able to take everything from there. That's going to add 10 to 14 days of processing time before you're ready to submit the loan. But once you have that particular work done, at that point, you should be looking at your normal 30-day window. So I would tell you to look at a 60-day window, but really you're going to be aiming for 45 days on these transactions. And then as you get better at them, you will be able to whittle that down to looking at a total, time frame and duration of 30 days. But you have to crawl before you walk, before you run. So let's kind of take it from that particular standpoint. All right, so that was a great question, Jeff. Julia has another great question for us. Is solar allowed? Solar, unfortunately, is one of those things that would necessitate doing a consultant's report. So no, Julia, we would not be able to do solar underneath the VA, but we would be able to do solar underneath our FHA 203K or conventional homestyle programs. All right, so that is our answer for that. Let's see. Are we the only lender? This is another ORA question. Are we the only lender doing the VA renovation program? No, we are not. There are a few out there. There are not many, but as the program kind of gets its feet, I expect to see more lenders beginning to participate, but for right now, it's kind of slim picking. All right, now, Pam's asked the question, does the first draw only eligible at 50% complete? Is that correct? All right, so remember, we had two different draw scenarios that we played out. The first would be if there's only one contractor. If there's one contractor, we would be able to do 3 draws. So our prescribed method for doing 3 draws for one contractor would be 1 draw at 20%, 1 draw at 60%, and then the final draw at total project completion. All right. That's if you have one contractor. If you have multiple contractors, then we go down to 2 draws per contractor, and then yes, we would do 1 draw at 50 and then 1 draw at completion. All right, but there are 2 draws. It makes the most logical sense to do one at 50%, but ultimately, each individual contractor on a multiple contractor job will be given 2 inspections, or 2 draw inspections for the entire project. All right, now, here's our first guideline style question. This is from Denise. She's asking what's the maximum DTI. DTI and everything is going to work exactly the same as normal qualifications for credit. So everything regarding credit, debt ratio, credit scores, where we go in the manuals, all of those things, everything is going to be completely, totally identical to the VA lending program that you know currently. All right, so none of that's going to be any different. We've not made any changes to credit qualifying criteria for it being renovation. All right, they just have to be able to afford the additional debt included when we are financing the renovations into the purchase price. All right, so let's see. Oh no, I've done it again. I tried to use the scroll wheel. The scroll wheel for all of the questions you guys have asked today is not my friend. Now I gotta find my place again. Sorry for this little bit of an extra delay. All right, I found my place once again. All right, the next question was very similar, about process and time flow. So I'm not going to go through that particular type of question again. All right, there's a question about fees. REMN, us in particular, we only charge our normal $8.95 underwriting fee. We don't charge anything in addition. The fees that you would incur, let's say from third parties, if you decide to hire someone to do additional inspections, all right, if that's required, their charge would be a third party fee. The title update fee that we tell everybody to look out for is going to be no more than $130, per file. So really, when you're not looking at doing consultant loans, there are a lot less fees to really consider. Now, the only other thing would be, let's say if there are permits required, and that's going to be whatever the township or municipality charges for permits. All right, I see some questions in here, and I'm going to paraphrase a few together because they're all kind of sprinkled in about the same area. And it's really about contractor vetting and having a list of approved contractors. We do maintain a list of approved contractors. Obviously, none of them, well, considering we've just lost this program about a month ago, we've not really submitted many at all for VA renovation, just yet. So that VA renovation aspect, whether they have that idea or not, is going to be something that we do track moving forward. But obviously right now, we do not have many. However, the VA does have thousands of large contractors and home builders that they have already worked with in every market across the country. So those people already have a VA ID. So if we can come across someone that already has a VA ID that has been previously vetted by us, that would be fantastic. But we will begin to flesh out that knowledge, over the next couple of months as we really begin to do more and more of these types of loans. Let's see. Now I have a great question here about exterior work. So Sean has asked, what about stucco, painting, fencing, garage doors, front lawns, and landscaping? You've named many, many, many things that all fall under exterior repairs. And I gave you a note early on in the presentation really saying that exterior work has to be reviewed because we have to make sure that we can complete it within the 90 days. There are several areas around the country where weather will not allow that at certain times of the year. There's just certain times of the year where certain exterior projects are not going to be doable, depending upon geography, where you are, and the weather that you are likely to face. Like here in the Northeast, in the winter, we have permanent frost. There's no way that you'd be able to do landscaping. If you close on a purchase here in January, you would have to have it done by April. And the ground will just be beginning to thaw in April. So an exterior project on a house here in the Northeast that featured heavy landscaping would just not be doable. Meanwhile, that same property were in Florida, while you do have to worry about the stormy season with hurricanes and whatnot, and maybe there are some exterior projects that you would want to avoid because of that, in general, you're really worried about rain. So being able to complete exterior projects like the ones that you just mentioned, in many cases they will be doable, but weather will not permit some of them to be doable where we can complete them within the 90 days that we have from the date of funding on the loan. All right, so we'll have to take case by case, situations where we look at them, determining when we're trying to close, and then seeing if the exterior renovations are likely to be completed within that 3-month window after our intended closing date. All right, let's go to the next question because we are running out of time. So can the borrower pay the contingency in cash and get that portion back in cash, if not used, similar to the 203K program? Julia, that is a great question, and I'm not 100% sure. I don't think we've allotted for that on the current version of that maximum mortgage worksheet, and I don't know if that actually violates any portion of the rule from the VA. We'll take a closer look into that, but that'll be a type of question that I will get back to you on. And in fact, any questions that I did not get to, we're going to have to make a Q&A style document to answer the rest of them, because I certainly can see that there are many, many, many questions, and in the couple minutes that we have left to use this for the next scheduled webinar to be completed, using our webinar service here, I'm not going to be able to get to them all, but let's try to do as many more as we can before I have to make my exit. So let's see, can a non-load bearing wall be removed, such as to open a kitchen? If it's not a load bearing wall and is not structural, yes, we would be able to do that. Similar to as a 203K limited. Okay, so if it's not going to be considered a structural alteration, we would be able to do it. So the answer to that question in particular is yes. All right, the next question, will we be able to exceed county limits? No, any county limits that you would normally face with your loan would also be applicable here. We would not be able to supersede county lending limits on the VA. So any natural VA loan limits that you would incur would also be applicable here. Okay, let's see. Our next question, what if a property for sale has damage from hail to windows and siding? Can VA renovation cover those items? Well, damage to hail, damage from hail that's limited to windows and siding doesn't sound like it particularly poses a health problem. Those are things that you just definitely want to have fixed on the home, so you wouldn't be ineligible for that. The siding, it's an exterior thing, it's got to be something that we can complete within 90 days. So as long as we can complete the siding within 90 days and then we're replacing windows from hail damage and there are no actual health or safety violations existing within the property for those particular reasons, yes, they would be eligible. All right, Pam has a question. Are there a list of VA-approved condo communities? That is a good question. I don't have an answer for you just yet. That's something I will look into, and I will include an answer on our Q&A document, Pam. So that is a great question. We will save it for there. All right, and she's also asked to explain contingencies. And I'm sorry if I made the assumption that everyone here has previous renovation experience. A contingency is actually a side amount of money that we set aside, and it's typically at 10% of the total cost of the project. So let's say if you're doing a $30,000 renovation, the contingency would be $3,000 that we would set aside. And that is basically our emergency money. Should anything go wrong during the project, that's the money that we would use to take care of additional repairs that are popping up that were completely and totally unforeseen by everyone. All right, so at base, our contingency is 10%. And then on situations where the property does not have operable utilities, at the time of the inspection, that's when we would go to 15%. All right, so unfortunately for all of us, that has to be our final question. I'm sorry for anyone's question I did not get to just yet. However, I want you to realize we will do a Q&A style document to answer the remaining questions that were asked through the webinar. I thank all of you for taking the time this afternoon to sit here with me and to go through our brand new VA renovation loan program. I look forward to seeing all of you on a good old fashioned July the 24th. I look forward to talking to you all then. Thank you very much, everybody. Have a wonderful afternoon.